I think this is my 10th five-year forecast, if that makes sense. I used to start out by saying school districts are the only taxing entity in the state that has to produce a five-year forecast. Even the state only produces a two-year budget. So, you know, I know you guys don't like hearing about it, so I'm just going to see if I could show you what we're talking about here. The current forecast, the projected beginning balance is roughly $39 million. The projected ending balance is $30 million for the current fiscal year. What we're looking at in revenue is $85 million, and we're looking at $94 million in expenditure. Now this, as I've said before, the district has been spending down their monies, spending down their balances. We've been doing this for a number of years, so we wouldn't come back to the taxpayers. What has occurred, we said we would come back to the taxpayers when money is needed. So you could see, again, we're estimating to spend down our monies itself. Now, this is important here because this shows you exactly where our monies are coming from. 67% of our revenues are coming from local taxpayers. That includes businesses, both industrial and commercial, and residential. We also have monies coming from our public utilities, which are a minor portion of what we receive. We have 28% of the monies coming from the state. State, 17 million is coming from the Fair School Funding Plan. We have roughly 800,000 coming from the wellness that was placed into the budget, and then we also have what is the state says is their portion. The state provides local taxpayers a rollback and homestead reductions, and they make school districts and other taxing entities whole. Well, they did that up until, I want to say 2013, and after 2000, with the April levy of 2013, it was the last one that you could collect rollbacks on. The November levy of 2013, we could not collect rollback monies on, so we are collecting homestead monies on. And that is the substitute levy that is now in our possession.
So, Mr. Chambers, can you explain to the community that if we're not collecting our rollback, does that mean we have?
That means the taxpayers are paying the rollback for that levy. So.
Mr. Chambers, one more thing on that last chart. Someone mentioned earlier today too, that I was speaking to about lottery money. Would that be in that little gray slice of all of the revenue?
No, lottery money is part of that state funding.
Thank you.
Yeah, what happens is when the lotteries were first put out there, it was supposed to be the be-all, end-all for all school districts. I forget the representative out of Parma who pushed for the lotteries, and yes, at the time, the thought was that these would be separated out specifically for schools. And I think he thought that the monies that were going to schools at that time would continue to go to schools at that time. When the state was in a pinch, they decided that, well, we have these lottery funds out here for the schools. We'll just plow that in and substitute what the schools are getting and then take that money and use it for themselves. Well, for other purposes. I shouldn't say themselves. It's always for other purposes. So, yes, school funding includes lottery monies. How much of that is the lottery money and how much is additional funding, I can't tell you at this point.
What about casino money?
Casino monies are also part of that 28%. That is separate, unlike the lottery monies, that is separate monies that are on top. Last year, the district received $300,000 for casino revenue.
Mr. Chambers, you might have mentioned this, and I missed it. Is the sales tax part of that gray?
The forecasted monies do not include sales tax at all. This only includes the general fund and the substitute levy. Okay, here's another view of but it also includes over the life of the forecast itself. You could see the 2023, which was last year, so that's our base year for revenue sources. If you look out to 2028, you could see the percentage isn't moving anywhere. The percentages are the two graphs on your left, really. The monies that, the increases that you see are based on more revenues coming in from the property taxpayers, a little more revenues coming in from the state, and then we're also projecting out more revenues coming in from the investments, since investments are now up to 5.5% as opposed to where they were in 2023 at 0.5%.
And Mr. Chambers, the state funding, they determine that percentage of what they're going to give us because we are considered a wealthy district, correct? And that is why they fund us at the level that they do?
The state percentage of funding for the school district is roughly 30% of what the state says they're funding for schools. They feel that we are wealthy enough where our local taxpayers make up the difference between the $8,000 plus per student that they are funding. So we're receiving roughly $1,400 per student from the state, and the local taxpayers are supposed to make up the difference. So.
And I think another real important thing to emphasize here, and we talked about this at the Finance Committee last week, and Jean had mentioned this earlier this evening, the two first bars with the real estate tax, which is what our millage gets us. You see between 2023 and 2028, it's the same. So when a levy goes on the ballot, no matter what happens with property taxes, it stays the same.
Right, an increase in people's property taxes does not mean we aren't getting more money. Right. We do not.
I believe that's my next slide. Okay. The bars on the left, I'll talk about the bars and not the graph because people don't, or not the chart because people don't like looking at numbers. The bars on the left are the voted millage. So when you went to the ballot box back in 76 or before, you voted in 30.1 mils. So that, as I say, that was 76 and before. So whatever was voted in 1950 up to 1976, they were all added together. It totaled 30.1 mils. What we're getting from that right now is 3.14 mils from residential property taxpayers. We have, and Aaron mentioned this, we have 9 levies that we're receiving monies for. And you could see all the boxes that are blue are much higher than those that are orange. Orange is what we're actually receiving from. If you go to 18, that is the substitute levy. Well, let me jump back some. All those levies go down to the state. The state then applies a reduction factor to it. So when valuations go up, the reduction factor also goes up. And what happens is the reduction factor is then applied to the millage and reduces the millage. So that's why we're down to 3.14 mils on 30.1 mils. If you go out to 2018, that is the substitute levy. The substitute levy is placed out there by the county auditor. The county auditor is obligated to reduce the tax rate as the valuation goes up. And that's why you see them both level there. Now, the last one there is the bond, and also that's at the county auditor's purview. And the county auditor receives the debt schedule from the school district, and so they place the principal and interest, and that is what the tax millage is out there for the bond itself. And that's why you see both the reduction factor, or the tax rate, and the effective rate being the same as well. But here's a good example of, as your valuations go up, the school district is not receiving any more monies. The monies stay the same, but the tax rate goes down. It's called the effective rate. Ron, you knew about this when you were in the Finance Committee. Would you like to join it again? I'm trying to get him, since he's leaving, I'm trying to get him on any committee I could get him on, so.
I do appreciate this graphic. I believe it's January of each year we approve these effective rates, don't we? At the organizational
Yeah,
meeting?
it's at the, well,
Or
it's
tax
either in
hearing?
December or January, yes.
Right. So I do appreciate, usually, yeah, it's just a list of numbers. I do appreciate the graphic. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, this shows you the cost per pupil per day. You could see that the graph itself is made a little bit different because this one just shows what the residential property taxpayers are paying. It doesn't include the commercial industrial. That's all part of the orange portion of the pie chart. The residential property taxpayers in Medina are simply paying 43% of anything that goes that is expensed here by the district. The businesses, commercial, industrial, the public utilities, the state, they pay 57% of the portion. So if you take that into account, our residents do pay a lot for our students. Now here are the expenditures. You can see we have 80,000 in personnel costs, or sorry, 80 million in personnel costs. That's roughly 85%. As was stated before, we are a industry that we're in the top 10 in the county, where I think we have more staff than any other industry in the county, possibly. But in the school district itself, we are probably the only business that deals strictly with personnel. And that's why 85% of our costs are to personnel. We don't create a product. The product that we create walks out our door every day and says hello to mom and dad. They come back every day and say hello to us. So there is no cost, hardly any cost for supplies, hardly any cost for equipment, hardly any cost for materials. That's our industry. That's not a business model that you want to be under, but it's our business model.
And I think it's important to note, like you said as well, we are a big employer in the community.
Top 10 employer.
Right.
And I think if you look at any school district in the state, they are in the top 10, top 20 of their communities as well. Okay, now this is our forecast. This is the bottom line of our forecast for revenues and expenditures. So if you look at the forecast, we have 23 actual. You could see a blip there in 25. That's the 24-25 year. That's because on our forecast, the projection that I had in my forecast before you guys decided to add anything was 7.5 mils. So you could see the blip in 25. We would receive the full amount in 26 fiscal year, because between January and June, we only receive roughly half a levy amount. Our fiscal year ends in June, so the next fiscal year, 25-26, would be when we receive the full levy amount. And even with 7.5, I cannot project reductions at all, and I didn't with the forecast. I know that now the board is looking at reductions. I know Mr. Sable is looking at reductions, but with the creation of the forecast, reductions were not placed in there at all. So you could see without reductions, we would still be deficit spending. That's why we would be looking for reductions. Our projected balance, as was on, I believe, Mr. Sable's slide before, we're looking at roughly $7 million to end the fiscal year 27-28. And here's our annual change. It looks like a big change in revenue, but if you read the numbers, it's only going from historical annual revenue of 1.14% increase to 1.2% increase. That includes possible levy here. And that's why you see on the bottom there, revenue is projected to change an average of 4.4% annually with the levy. Historically on our expenditures, it's a little bit different. We're going from 3.75% to 3.84%. This change is if no reductions are placed out there. So that's what I wanted to make sure you all know before this. And finally, this is where we would be if we weren't looking at the levy itself. I always speak of where we are on a monthly basis of true days cash. I said we were at 171 days. You know, at the end of the year, our true days cash is always lowest in December and lowest in June. So when they're projecting 119, that would be what we'd be looking at to end this fiscal year, 61 next fiscal year. The negative projections are based on if no levy passes. We knew that 25, 26 would be a time where we would be looking at cash and desperate need for cash. So.
Now, Mr. Chambers, at the work session last week, you also mentioned if we were in negative, that could, when you submit the forecast, fiscal caution. Correct? That's still the case because...
Ryan, could you put on the last page of the I forget what it's called. My system's out right here, so not that. Go to the next one. Nope. Thank you. Last page of that one. No, go to your downloads. It's in there. Nope, up there. Thank you. Thank you, Craig. Ryan wasn't working there, I noticed. Go to forecast report, go to the last page of the report. Oh, just pan out over to your right here. Pan out. Thank you. Okay, here's what Ms. Parkhurst was talking about. Okay, what Ms. Parkhurst was talking about, I pointed this out the other day. The state will be looking at this line or this line, one of the two, whichever one they want to look at. But they always look out 3 years. And if they look out 3 years and they see a negative, they're going to come back to Mr. Sable and myself and say, hey, why are you in the negative? And we're going to, we show them the forecast and they're going to come back with, okay, we need you to fix this negative. Well, the only way you could fix the negative is by making reductions, and we know that already. But I can't project reductions that aren't there. I can't go ahead and project reductions. The board is just taking action today on a possible levy, so I can't project reductions right now. They're also going to, because we are in the negative here, they're going to place us in what is known as fiscal caution. The state has three different versions here: fiscal caution, fiscal watch, and fiscal emergency. Now, when they put you in fiscal caution, it's just a good, conversation between superintendent, the treasurer, and the Department of Ed. When you're in fiscal watch, it's a good conversation, but they also don't trust you. And they bring in their auditor on a monthly basis to audit your books. And when you're placed in fiscal emergency, you as board members act, but then you have, well, is there legislation going on right now that'll got rid of it? You as board members will act, but there's, in the past, they brought in outside board members to take over the district. Well, I believe that was either in legislation right now or passed through legislation that will no longer occur. So you as board members will act during any fiscal emergency. The whole idea is you got to make cuts to state minimum for everything. You have to dissolve programming. You got to reduce personnel until you could get back into the black. So that's where we're looking at right here. This is going to be submitted to the state, and we're going to be looking at a letter from the state or a telephone call from the state saying, what are you going to do? So.
But I think you mentioned in the fiscal committee meeting, when generally speaking, whenever any district anywhere is going for, I think it's important to note when you're asking for a levy that this is not an uncommon thing at this point.
It's not uncommon. You do hear about the state declaring fiscal caution for some earlier than others. At times, as I say, the first conversation had, they may look at that and say, okay, we're not going to declare. But it's out there for them to declare right now. Correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Chambers regarding those items?
Dave, just one that, can you go back to that, or is that too hard? Oh, gotcha. That blue line, so you forecasted that without the levy, right?
Correct.
That's blue, right?
Yeah, if you look, this is all forecasted without the levy. The levy is forecasted right here.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, but without the levy, when's the first year we're negative?
First year negative,
Yeah, I can't,
we're looking at, if you pull this down, I believe it's 25, 26.
okay. Oh,
Because 26, 27, 27, 28. So
Okay.
it's 25, 26.
25. Gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you.